Greenwich Council, always giving more for less.
Bienvenue, welcome once again to another Cladding Matters. I cannot believe it. There's lots to talk about, particularly when it comes to a certain council whose name will be mentioned soon enough. But first of all, just to get us going and in the mood, Hamish McClay, fresh back from his travels.
Oh yes, indeed, just back from the metropolis, some 40 minutes ago. So,
huzzah!
I alighted at the Bicester Village train station, which used to be Bicester Town. But anyway, many of you will know sort of Bicester Village. So many people know about it. Today we're going to be speaking about politics, property, and the problem with AI data. Now, the AI data isn't so much a problem, it's just the lack of understanding there. And it would appear, but unfortunately today our colleague who's meant to be joining us was unable to actually attend today. So
that's fine. That's fine. We'll pick up that in detail on a separate podcast. But we have lots of stuff to talk about, do we not, Hamish?
Well, well, this is the big thing, because we're saying the big problem we've got at the moment, whilst yes, the AI can be part of it, is with the change. We've got big changes. We've got a change of council.
Indeed.
We now have a new council, which I believe is are they not going to be voting in this week, Steve, or next week? I can't remember.
No, they're voted in. They're re-elected already.
Oh, they've done the election already.
Yes.
I'm just sort of wondering, because the only way that anything changes is by making a change. Now, we have a government. We've had a series of governments. This one particularly is bad, because as soon as a challenge comes up, yes, we're going to have a special meeting about that. Now they have a special meeting and nothing changes. Now, of course, what we've got a situation we have now, Greenwich Council, they don't quite have the same level of control which they did have previously, but they still do. The Labour Party does still control the council, and Steve will fill us in various details. And they had the opportunity to actually be honest and make an honest statement and start afresh for the next sort of 4 years, to admit to the fact that, yes, there were some issues with Royal Artillery Quays, with many other buildings as well, but particularly Royal Artillery Quays, because they were shown the evidence. They do understand it. It was a misunderstanding. And yes, we do appreciate that these things need doing. Well, they have to do something about it. If you haven't got a fire door, you need a fire door. End of story. But that fire door has never appeared since the building was built, which is why the building control said, hey, look, this has failed. It's failed here in 2019 as much as it failed when it was actually sort of built. But nothing's happened. They might even have had a meeting about it, but nobody was allowed to actually speak or make any sort of inroads. Now, we have an opportunity, a bright new day, a bright new council. Is it a bright new council? Are things beginning to happen?
Well, Steve, welcome to the show as ever. Now, look here. There's been all sorts of shenanigans going on with this famous Greenwich Council. It's all things that are put. I believe the leadership's much diminished in power, because perhaps it's not as strongly represented as once it was. And Stephanie Barwise, who is an incredible KC, who has stepped into the breach and in many ways not just stood up for justice, but dare I say it, stood up for you and your campaign, where people were accusing you of making personal swipes at people, which is absolutely untrue, that you were going after facts being changed. There's a fundamental fact that they stated that there was nothing to see here, that there'd been no problems, there had been no contradiction to it, when in fact we have it in black and white. That's not so. Do take it away. Steve, give us an update, please.
Yes, well, so the Greenwich Council is controlled by Labour, and of course they've you know, pushed a very hard campaign, and they still managed to retain after the local elections the majority control under the great leader of Anthony Okereke. So, you know, that's obviously for Royal Artillery Keys residents. You know, you've basically got a situation where we pointed out to the whole of pretty much every Facebook group we can about, you know, the issues and the denials of all our evidence, and the fact that council for a year now, and it is a year, it was May last year,
Good Lord.
the evidence. It's been a whole year, and they've done nothing about it. And what's worse, and this is what I've said to the councillors, you know, a lot of councillors are just silent. You know, they're allowing all of this, you know, shocking silencing of our evidence and allegations, false allegations against me of inciting violence against female councillors and harassment from the head of legal threat letter. All of this has been allowed to go on, and we've made it public. So just the councillors concede, just not only are they, you know, ignoring the risk, but they're adding further risk to our professional and personal reputations all over Greenwich, and also to a place where we live, West Thamesmead. So, you know, it's been appalling. Anyway, we've had some good news, you know, in the midst of all of that gloom and doom. Stephanie Barwise, who was the Grenfell inquiry KC that represented all the victims of, well, some of the victims of Grenfell and that appalling tragedy that cost 72 lives at the Grenfell inquiry. And she's taken quite an interest in our case. And I'm happy to say she's produced a rather extensive Substack on not only the issues with the council denying the evidence, but also, you know, she's gone through all the evidence and she does a quick appraise of it, which I'll take you through, and also comments on the fact there's a bit of a surprise at the end, and we'll leave that to your viewers to enjoy, because old Mr. Okereke, the council leader, seems to not consider Grenfell inquiry cases beyond his reach of vitriol. But anyway,
Really? Good Lord.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a twist in this. But anyway, so let's have a look at
I think you need to set your screen up. There we go. Are you ready to there we go. Let's add it to the stage. Here we go. So it's the case of Canada, a local authority in denial about life-threatening fire safety defects. Take us through.
Yeah, so basically, and I think Sue may join us at some point, so keep an eye out for her, Gareth.
I will do.
But yeah, so case for Candor, a local authority in denial about life-threatening fire safety defects. Now, that's an appalling title, isn't it? You know, life-threatening. This isn't from Steve Day. This is from Grenfell Inquiry KC. And she summarises, as is well known, Councillor Taggart Ryan communicated the decision that there was no evidence of breaches of building regulations at the time Royal Artillery Keys, which is called RAC, was constructed. And this is key. She, as a Grenfell Inquiry Casey, said that patently incorrect statement was made over a year ago and has yet to be retracted or explained, despite uproar from many commentators, not just the residents of Royal Artillery Keys. And of course, we've had the Grenfell Tower Trust, we've had former State Premier Ted Barlow, we've had countless Royal Artillery Keys residents, we've had the Earl of London calling for a public inquiry.
You've not wanted for people to back that position, have you?
No. And we've had 3 music videos from Your Good Self in collaboration with me. And we've also had countless, I can't tell you how many, probably over 50, 60 emails from various residents over the year trying to get them to retract the position. And also we've had an article in the Sun, we've had an article on the BBC National News website, we've had My London 2 or 3 times, and Stonewall, nothing. Anyway, so this is all being picked up very eloquently. So what Stephanie does then is basically points out, you know, some of the technical details, and you know, I won't go into it too much, but you know, the key takeaway is Barrett installed the cladding in such a way that it was non-compliant. And the other thing that is very interesting is the missing fire doors from the firefighting shaft. And you know, that is pretty worrying because that was on the plans, and it, you know, not only have they not kept to the law, they haven't even kept to the plans. So that's also very worrying. And then what Barrett's done is it's used this watered down PAS 9980 standard to basically leave on, and we've covered this many times, the second most combustible material in Europe on our single internal fire escape stairs. And this is very interesting. So this is from an experienced construction KC. Whilst I've not seen a report stating the foam insulation, that's the XPS panels, was a breach of regulations at the time of construction, it clearly was such a breach. The C says it was, as approved document B at the time, 2002, provided that protected stairways are designed to provide virtually fire sterile areas. And she says highly combustible XPS is inconsistent with a fire sterile area, and unsurprisingly, the residents want it removed and the missing fire doors put in the fire shaft. And Barrett's refused so far, as we all know. So that's damning. And then it comes into, you know, the next part of the storytale. So we asked the council to, you know, help us get those missing elements out off the remediation included, using a power called the Building Act 1984, which they have. And that was the whole point. They said they couldn't act, but then they also denied the evidence of all the regulation breaches. And, you know, this is from a KC. This statement was demonstrably untrue, she says. And Mr. Day, on behalf of 1,000 residents of Royal Artillery Quay St. Greenwich, a stack of expert reports, including a letter from its own building control itself, which identified that the internal escape stairs were not fully compartmentalized, therefore breaching the 2000 regs. And then it goes on to other things as well. And also on the internal defects, she writes, Gresham SMS, a fire expert, said that there may be prosecutions in the event of a fire because the defects are that dangerous. Now let that sink in. You know, not only
that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And you know, their position is that there's nothing illegal at RAC. Well, you don't arrest people for breaking the law, not for not breaking the law at the time, but then the law getting stricter after the Grenfell fire. The only reason there would be prosecutions is that the law was broken at the time. So it's all contrary to the council. And then this is very, very good. So that she's dealt with the technical evidence, destroying the council position. And then she says it gets curiouser and curiouser, however, as we tumble down the rabbit hole which leads to Greenwich Council's alternate reality. Brace yourselves for absurdity.
I tell you what, I'm not sure why they're not just saying we've got some alternative facts. That was the wasn't that from the States? Oh, Sue, I think, is about to join us. What's her surname? Do you know?
No.
She's from RAC.
Sue, RAC resident.
RAC resident. There we go. I'll put that in there. Sue, if you can hear me, if you turn on your video, please, and then we can get you on. There we go. Let's do that. I'm not sure we can. Sue, are you there?
I am here, but when I press.
Oh, never mind, Sue. We'll take your audio only. We'll take you whichever way we can take you. Go back to where you are so you can actually hear us, please. Or never mind. Carry on as you were until Sue turns up, please.
Okay.
Steve?
Right. So brace yourself for more absurdity, she writes. So quite apart from not retracting its incorrect statement, various Greenwich councillors have instead accused Mr. Day of harassing or bullying or trolling Taggart Ryan. Mr. Day has even been threatened with legal action. And I've been threatened with allegations of inciting violence against Taggart Ryan by creating a poster putting a publicly available photo of the councillor and her incorrect statement alongside Stephanie. And she says both quotations were correct. Both images were taken from the web. Mr. Day, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on because I've done a lot of posters. And then this is the interesting twist. Imagine my surprise is when on the eve of the Greenwich local election last week, when one would think he had, and he is the leader of the council, more important and better things to be doing, the leader of the council contacted me to ask if I consented to my image being used to troll and bully himself and Miss Taggart Ryan. And then she writes, clearly the use of my photo to give her the words I use could not amount to trolling or bullying either Mr. Okereke or Miss Taggart Ryan. The council appears to be seeking to silence. She's put that in, seeking to silence both Mr. Day and me, a Grenfell inquiry lawyer who's helping desperate residents get dangerous prosecution-worthy defects removed from their blocks of flats that they deny existing. She writes that it appears that he's seeking to silence both me and a Grenfell inquiry Casey. Now that's absolutely ridiculous. And then
absurd. Absolutely absurd.
And the final thing she says, I was moved to point out to the council leader the best policy in such circumstances was to correct the patently incorrect statement rather than lashing out at critics. And then the answer came there, none.
Well, I'm just going to add, Sue is, I'm afraid, audio only. Sue,
okay.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
My
Can you
pleasure.
hear me?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, that's good.
So let me introduce you to Sue. Is a RAC resident and is very kindly consented to be part of this show. Steve, I'm going to take that off the screen for the moment.
Yeah, perfect.
Sue, can you give us some of your feedback and your feelings about the current situation?
What I find so extraordinary about the current situation is that now there must be masses of Labour councillors and people actually quite high up in the Labour Party that know about RAQ and know just how preposterous these claims are, that there's no evidence. Yet none of them seem to be doing anything. We know that Stephanie Barwise's Substack has been widely read, yet nobody seems to be prepared to come and talk to us. I mean, I personally have invited Jardia, our councillor, to come and have some tea and a biscuit and see for herself the building and see that there aren't any fire doors. And she hasn't even bothered to reply. I've written to our MP, but they all just don't want to know. And I just find that deeply shocking.
Sue, what say you about the fact that there are some residents that wish that Steve would just go quietly into the mist and leave the whole thing alone?
Yes, I understand that some people might feel like that. It's obviously incredibly short-sighted. I mean, one can't cover this up. I mean, the council's tried to cover it up, but we shouldn't be trying to cover it up. The building is dangerous and we've got to get it fixed. And I really do believe that we will get it fixed. I can see that they just like to pass on the problem, a few people, I don't think it's many, to somebody else and think, oh, well, if I could sell my flat, then I wouldn't have to think about it. But that's not a very honourable way of behaving anyway. I mean,
even so, selling your flat at this present stage with the fact that it's got XPS panels still stuck on the side, which have the similar flammability that firelighters, and also the fact that you, at the moment you're cocooned inside a beautiful shroud, I don't think lends itself to selling the flat for a decent price anyway.
No, I mean, people, there are sales taking place. One can see that on Rightmove. But I think only well below what the value would be if the problem was fixed.
Right.
So I think it's incredibly short-sighted of them. But a lot of us don't want to sell. We want to live there and we want to be safe. And if we sell it, we want to sell it to somebody who will also be safe. We don't want to just pass this on and think, oh, well, I'll be all right and I'm prepared to lose money about that. You suffer the fire risk. I think that's not the right approach.
And would you say that from your purview that Steve still has the backing of a number of residents in RAC, and there's no issue with that as far as I'm concerned, is there?
Oh, absolutely. I think Steve has overwhelming backing. I mean, I think what he's done is incredibly impressive. I mean, it really has been. And I think we're so grateful to Steve because he has taken this leadership and he's pushing this forward. And he's got this amazing energy to do so. So, I want to say thank you to Steve for that. And I think the vast majority of residents, absolutely the vast majority, feel exactly the same. And I've talked to people and they all say, Steve's amazing. We need to put a statue up to him, somebody said.
Ah,
Mm.
there
Well,
you go.
I'd say a similar thing and a different kind of statue.
Forgive me for ambushing you there, Sue. But in all seriousness, there's the fundamental issue here is that until the council agree that this thing was bad from the start, rather than hiding behind the fact that there's nothing to see here, it's hard to move forward, isn't it?
It is, and it's not even as if we're asking the council to do anything. Some active help would be welcome, but we're not even asking that. We're just asking them to say, okay, actually, maybe there were a few defects. We just forgot about those. Just allow that. It's this. There's no evidence of defects. Is so preposterous, and yet they're sticking doggedly to it, and one has to question why. And that is what I think is so very curious about it. Why would they behave like that?
I'm going to suggest, and I don't know what you think about this, Sue, that if they fear, or there is a fear, that if they were to agree that there were defects, that suddenly then throws into shade all the other works done by Barratt Homes, and they might be open the doorway to a whole bunch more activism. Do you think that could have something to do with it?
It might, but really the council should be concerned. If there are other buildings with similar problems, they also need to be fixed. And there's a very good reason why they should be wanting to fix these, because if builders know that they can build dodgy buildings and get away with it, we're never going to have safe buildings in this country.
Right.
I mean, that's why it's so vitally important that we win.
Well, Steve, you heard it there. Thank you so much, Sue. You can stay on if you wish, or sit in the audience. But it's lovely to have you with us.
Well,
Hamish,
thank you very much.
Not at all. Hamish, it seems incredible. Here we have Sue, who is part of the whole process, in as much as she's directly affected by it. She has spoken to other residents. There's an overwhelming feeling that what Steve's doing, what Building Safety Scheme.org is doing, and dare I say it, what the Earl of Lytton is trying to get through, even now, are all on the right side. How can this continue in good faith?
Well, what saddens me about the whole aspect, and I have mentioned this before, the type of work that we do is to investigate the records held by councils relative to the particular sort of properties. So I did carry out a search on one of the properties within Royal Artillery Quays. Now, not a mention was made of any remediation required.
Good Lord.
Anything sort of coming up. There was absolutely no mention whatsoever of the cladding issue. There was absolutely, within the records, and this would be up to the conveyancer who was working this one out, and hopefully it'll be a proper lawyer, to actually dig out the evidence of what it is costing residents. Now, if the council, who agreed to all of this, were having to pay themselves for the amount of insurance that's been increased, you look at the length of time that's been increased, and it's never going to change. So that those councillors are responsible for the increase in costs of all residents. They're also responsible for the total remediation. And it's one of those things, if we had a simplified court system and it wasn't going to cost residents a fortune,
right,
they would absolutely take these guys, this particular council, and all those councillors that are standing behind the current leader, they are responsible because they have not stood up and said, we don't like this. You look what's happened to the Labour Party generally. They've realised that the man in charge is pretty well fallen upon his sword. But what he's doing is sort of keeping the sword stuck through him, and he's not moving at all. To him, he doesn't see any errors in his judgment of what he said. And this head councillor, who basically he's retained the leadership. He's also retained the lie that there were no faults at the time of construction.
Yeah, I mean, I've quoted this before, Hamish, but I think it's worth quoting again. Edmund Burke: the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men and women to do nothing. And that's exactly what's happened. Steve, it appears to me that with our cajoling, though it's raised it, my goodness, we've had the ex-Premier of Victoria on, we've had all sorts of people, we've had MPs, we've had lords, and yet here we are. What is your vision for the next few months? Do you think we are making headway?
Well, we had some good news. I contacted a fire engineer, and the fire engineer basically has agreed to do a formal report and feels the panel should come off, and is surprised that any fire engineer would say that they will stay on. So we're going to crowdfund over the weekend. It costs about $3,000, and then we'll get a report saying these will come off, and then we'll send it to the building owners, and they'll make Barratt take them off, or we'll go to court and use the report there. So really good progress. And,
well, that's quite stunning, really. Well done.
Yeah, and also there is more and more councillors reaching out now from Labour, very secretly to me, saying that they're disgusted at Anthony Okereke, and you know, they admit they've been silent and remain silent, but they want me to know they're absolutely disgusted and are talking amongst each other. So I don't know. I would encourage all Labour councillors that may watch this to consider whether a leader that denies the existence of all evidence of unlawful construction for a whole year, gets his head of legal to send legal threats to residents desperately worried about their safety, allows councillors to go unchallenged, spreading incitement to violence allegations against 2 of the residents, and generally shouts at me across the street, accusing me of being dishonest, you know, whilst I was canvassing for the Lib Dems. You know, this is the leader of the council, and they need to question whether they need that leader.
I think there needs to be shouts of shame at him. Hamish, would you care to take us home?
Well, in fact, I was rather hopeful that with the voting that had gone through and the change of some councillors and even all the rest of it, it would have been a sensible thing to do, to put a new leader in there who could take away that statement. And again, as Sue was explaining to us, we're only asking them to take away a statement.
Yes.
And they don't need to do anything else other than admit to the fact that after following a serious internal review, if they want to do it that way, it would be more beneficial if they made it public, but they're not going to do that. But just take that statement away. And unfortunately, they re-elect that same leader that's himself sort of full of lies. And obviously he's got his team, because obviously as the leader, he's not going to get, he's allowing his staff to come out with those statements. That is the worst of it. What sort of a leader does that? At least Starmer admits to things, doesn't he?
Well, at least. And what I would say, as a podcast host and co-host with Hamish of this channel, I would like to extend a very warm, heartfelt welcome to any members of the current council, including Mr. Okereke, if they'd like to come on and have a right of reply, and please explain to us why it's okay, in the face of blinding evidence that cannot be refuted, that they carry on supporting what could only be referred to as a totally misguided lie. I want to thank Sue from Rep Resident. Thank you so much for attending. Steve Day, of course, from buildingsafetyscheme.org. Please do go and check out that website. And of course, our esteemed Lord and Master Hamish McClay of Search and Convey, who helped set this up in the first place. And to all of you out there watching, the fight is not over yet. We're still waiting. It was just another small battle, but we will win this war. And thank you so much for all your support going on. Please keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. And in these troubled times, please look after your mental health. Until next week, goodbye.
There's a tale about some folks with hammers and some nails. They'll polish you the moon, but their word always fails. They'll tell